something historic just happened in Brussels.
And it is adopted. So Okay.
This is the chamber of the European Parliament, the same parliament that for decades lectured sovereign nations about the importance of open borders and human rights. And just literally days ago, it voted to begin mass deportations throughout the continent, Trump style. The same institution that called Europe's patriots far-right extremists, the same institution that labeled concerns over mass migration racist, the same institution that's been punishing nations like Hungary and Poland for refusing to open up their borders, that institution just voted by a huge margin to do exactly what those patriot leaders have been demanding for years. And the left is having a complete and total meltdown. But there's something even bigger happening beneath the surface of this story. The Overton window of European politics just shifted, and we're going to find out that it shifted permanently. You are not going to want to miss this. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis. You're not going to get anywhere else, so you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. On Thursday, March 26th, the European Parliament did the unthinkable. They voted 389 to 206 to approve what's being called the Returns Regulation, a sweeping new legal framework designed to massively accelerate the deportation of illegal migrants from the European Union. This was not a narrow squeaker. This was not some procedural side vote. This was a full plenary vote in the Parliament of the European Union, and the so-called far right won decisively. The vote clears the way for formal trilogue negotiations with the European Council on a new binding legal standard for migrant removals across all 27 EU member states. And the political coalition that made it happen was something Brussels bureaucrats swore never, ever to allow. A unified right-wing bloc stretching from what's known as the EPP, the European People's Party, that's the mainstream center-right, all the way through the European Conservatives and Reformists, the Europe Sovereign Nations Group, and the Patriots for Europe movement. So all the different nationalist populist parties from all 27 nations, they coalition into more or less three groups, and they voted in a uniform bloc along with the center-right EPP, the European People's Party, and they absolutely crushed it. They passed the single most hardcore Trump-like mass deportation policy in over a century. Now, to understand just how seismic this was, you need to understand how badly the old system had failed. For years, for decades, the EU operated on a policy of managed chaos when it came to illegal migration primarily from Northern Africa and the Middle East. So when a migrant arrived illegally and then received a deportation order, almost all of them refused to comply, and that's because almost nothing happened to any of them. The European Migration Commissioner, Magnus Brunner, himself admitted the staggering scale of the continent-wide failure. Only about 1 out of 5 migrants, get that, only about 1 out of 5 who were told to leave the EU actually left. 80% of deportation orders go unheeded. Over the last decade, 4 out of every 5 illegal migrants ordered deported simply stayed. They stayed because the legal system was stacked in their favor. They stayed because a labyrinth of appeals, delays, and protections made actual deportation nearly impossible. They stayed because Brussels had spent 30 years building an architecture of bureaucratic paralysis designed, it was intentional. I'm not going to get them off the hook here. Designed deliberately to make enforcement functionally impossible. As a result, the Muslim population in Europe skyrocketed. It's exploded over the last 20 years, growing by an astonishing 50% between 2005 and 2025. And European citizens, the ones watching their cities transform, their neighborhoods change, their daughters afraid to walk home at night, they were told this was compassion. They were told this was progress. They were told that wanting your laws enforced made you a bigot. That failed globalist experiment, as of just days ago, has officially come to an end. Under the returns regulation, the EU is now moving toward 4 major changes. So first, stricter return procedures with real penalties. So migrants issued a deportation order will now be legally required to cooperate with their own removal with very strict enforcement and follow-up. Second, extended detention of up to 24 months. So under the old system, migrants could be detained briefly and then released into the country pending like endless appeals that could go on for years. That changes. Those deemed particularly security risks can now be placed in enhanced security facilities or even prisons while the removal is being processed. Third, return hubs outside the EU. This is the crown jewel. And the part that's making the progressive left absolutely lose their minds. It's comparable to Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. Under the new framework, EU member states can now negotiate bilaterally or in coalitions to establish deportation centers in third countries, countries outside EU borders, where rejected asylum seekers will be processed and held until removal. Germany, the Netherlands, Austria, Denmark, and Greece are already in active talks with African governments to establish these facilities. Italy, under Giorgia Meloni, actually pioneered this model with its Albania agreement, and the same Brussels bureaucrats who denounced Britain's Rwanda plan as barbaric just voted to make it standard EU policy. You literally can't make this stuff up. And fourth, permanent entry bans for security threats. Not a temporary restriction, permanent. If you're deported as a security risk, you are never coming back to Europe again. And it's already starting. The mass deportations have officially begun, and you're not going to believe where. But first, let me ask you a serious question. If you could earn consistent double-digit returns guaranteed by law, would you still risk your money in volatile markets? Because most investments today, if you think about it, they come with a catch, right? Stocks go up, but then they drop. Crypto is unpredictable, and real estate takes time, capital, and headaches. But I just learned about a method that's completely different from a friend of mine, Jay. It's backed by government authority. The returns are set by state law, and you can literally test the waters with as little as $50. No market timing, no complicated strategies, no dealing with tenants, no rehabs, and it doesn't take over your life either, just a couple of spare hours a week. This is the kind of predictable, law-based return strategy that institutions and hedge funds have secretly relied on for years. But most Americans have never, ever been shown it. So I asked Jay how long it would take him to teach me. And he told me he could explain the entire strategy and actually walk through it live in less than an hour. And that's when I asked him to do the same thing for you guys. Take a look at the latest from Germany. Their center-right Chancellor Friedrich Merz has just announced that upwards of 800,000 Syrian refugees will be repatriated. They will be sent back within the next 3 to 4 years. This isn't the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, the so-called far-right party doing this. This is their mainstream center-right party, the CDU, in cooperation with its coalition partners in the German Bundestag, the German parliament. And you need to let how significant this is hit you. This is the nation of Angela Merkel, who in many ways was the catalyst for this mass migration crisis back in 2015. The very country where this mass migration crisis began is sending them home by nearly 1 million. Merkel's vision for a borderless Europe has crumbled into dust, and it's her own political party that's doing it. And it's not just Germany. There's nothing short of a groundswell of legislation being passed pushing back against the Islamification of Europe. Years back, the Swiss People's Party successfully banned the construction of minarets throughout their nation, as well as wearing the burqa in public places. France, too, famously followed suit, banning the burqa in all public spaces, as has Belgium, Bulgaria, Austria, Denmark, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. They've all passed their own versions of the burqa ban. In fact, in October, Portugal became the 9th European country to pass a nationwide ban proposed by the populist right Chega Party, with fines up to 4,000 euros and prison terms of up to 3 years for anyone who forces a woman to veil. Now, of course, the political left is freaking out over this. The European Council of Refugees and Exiles is absolutely besides themselves. They cannot believe that Brussels, of all places, the European Parliament, has instituted these Trump-like remigration policies. But unfortunately for them, they just don't know what time it is. They, the political left, are the odd man out on this one. The Overton window, as it's called, has shifted so far and fast to the right that the progressive establishment no longer even has the vocabulary to respond effectively. They're still using they're going to the same verbal toolkit. Racist, far right, bigot, extremist. That toolkit's broken. All of this has gone mainstream now. Border security has always been mainstream. We know that. It just took a while for the bullies in Brussels to finally get the message. But based on what just happened there last week, that message was received loud and clear. A new era appears to be dawning in Europe. With the rise of the populist right taking over European politics, the power shifted away from borderless globalists to the border security of Western civilizationalists. And what we're watching in Brussels right now is the political expression of that civilizational awakening. Millions of ordinary Europeans looked at their transformed cities, their criminalized speech, their daughters afraid to walk home at night, and they concluded correctly that something sacred was being deliberately dismantled. And they went to the ballot box, and they kept going back again and again and again and again, and now their own members of parliament are rewriting the law and re-securing their continent. For Americans watching this unfold, don't mistake this for a distant drama. It's a preview. The same debate over civilizational coherence, cultural continuity, border sovereignty, and the weaponization of elite institutions against ordinary citizens, that's already happening here, already live, already urgent. What Europe is demonstrating in real time is that no institution is permanently captured. That the arc of demographics and democratic will can reassert itself even against the most entrenched bureaucratic consensus. That civilizations, when they're threatened with enough clarity and consequence, eventually fight back. History does not reward the hesitant. It rewards those who understood the moment and acted. Europe, it appears, is finally